So in my continuing effort to bring us good news about our young people, I thought I would introduce you to this young man who has successfully completed his requirements for graduation from one of our city's finest high schools. He did so at the age of 15. So y'all know I always have to make it personal. I thought I was great when I graduated at 17, but this is 15. Solomon Alvarez Gibson is now a graduate of the Baltimore City College High School. And you can't even legally drive. But his grade point average was 4.6. He is graduating 1 year ahead of his older sister, who is 17. He is graduating 3 years ahead of where's his twin sister?
She's sick today.
Oh, she's sick today. He is graduating, well, and that's Sade, your twin sister. He is joined today by both sisters, well, Sade's not here. His parents, Damon Gibson and Angela Alvarez, are here with us. Morgan grad, okay. Donna Givens is a school counselor. Thank you for joining us. Solomon is not going to be attending my alma mater. He's going to be attending Howard University this fall.
Yes.
And so I have a special certificate to give to you in recognition of your great achievement. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then also my Baltimore City pen for you. I'm not very good at this part, but I'm okay. Did you want to share a few words with us?
Yeah, I want to say that I'm very honored to be recognized by Mayor Pugh, and I want to emphasize how important it was for like the past 10 or 11 years of my education for people to be supporting me along the way, many people, including my parents, a lot of my teachers. And if those adults weren't there believing in me when I was younger, then I wouldn't have believed in myself to do this. So I do believe that other students in Baltimore City can be able to do this as long as they have older people who are willing to push them along the way. Thank you.
All right, give me a big round of applause. Are there any press questions for our graduate? Don't y'all wish y'all graduated at 15?
Solomon, do you know what's your intended major at Howard?
Oh, I'm majoring in architecture.
Anything else?
How old were y'all when you
Oh, and-
graduated? Go ahead, one more.
Solomon, just spell your first name just so we get that right.
Okay, SOLOMON.
Solomon wanted to know how old y'all were when y'all graduated from. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Great. So we had our call to action this past week, and I was reading one of the articles that said it's about time that Mayor Pugh did a call to action, but I want to make it very clear that the call to action did not begin last Saturday. You have to have action for people to get involved in before you call a call to action. And so that was the action part of the call to action that began actually in, I think it was early December, mid-December, January, when I asked, I think it was 30 people to come together to begin to plan a call to action. Those 30 people actually turned out to be nearly 100 people the first time they came together. And we have been meeting since, as many as 70 people, and then a small group of people to plan the action itself. So what happened on Saturday were a number of people standing room only in the auditorium who came together to get involved in the action program that we had put together. a number of individuals who were involved in mediation, learning how to mediate problems in their neighborhoods, in their communities, which is a program that is going on in the city now, working also with the police department, where on a weekly basis, 10 police officers and 10 young people get together just to learn how to interact with each other. And every child that I've had conversations with and police officers that I've had conversations with have said that it has made a difference in terms of the relationship between the police department and the community. The other things that took place, including the Teen Biz Challenge and working with the Squeegee young people to help them to get into programs, so forth, this summer. And then young people and the community were able to identify programs that they can get involved in this summer as well. So a lot of activity on Saturday. We will continue the call to action activities as we move forward. We will be setting up all of the youth programs. We haven't identified quite where that's going to be yet, but we're going to be moving around the city to make sure with the CEO of the school system, with the police commissioner, with the state's attorney, and a number of people in the community to make sure that we are on top of where our young people are this summer. So I'm open for questions.
That Guns for Bail program that I believe was passed through City Council, where is that at right now? What's the status on that?
I have no idea.
Madam Mayor, Monday night a woman was killed in southwest Baltimore. She had called police because one of her sons was assaulted. After the police left, she was killed. How can people in Baltimore be expected to call police and ask for help if they're going to be attacked, possibly murdered after they do so?
Well, let me just say, we are working with the community and the police department, and it is very difficult. As you well know, crime is a major problem in our city, and we're still seeing gun violence. And I think the commissioner says it best. It's about gun violence, it's about gangs, it's about drugs, and people should feel safe. And so, those kinds of incidences does pique people's ears because they think that they can't get engaged in the process of trying to help us reduce crime. And so I think the police department's response thus far has been adding more police officers to our streets. And we're looking at how do we continue to add more lights. People have to feel safe in our neighborhoods and communities. But the gun violence is out of control. And that's why when we went to Annapolis this past session, and we're having conversations now with our judges and so forth, that we've got to do better in terms of when we arrest people who have violent backgrounds, who have guns in their hands. Because while it is a misdemeanor in this state, it should at least be a felony to carry an illegal gun. There's just too many illegal guns on the streets of our city. We can tell you where they're coming from, but we've not yet been able to stop them. Did you want to add anything, Commissioner?
With the first part of the question. So, Paul, that call for service.
You may know where the Guns to Bail project is.
That guns for bail, that would require state law. So that's the appropriate place for that issue to be decided upon, and perhaps that'll take place next legislative session. But Paul, the police were called. It was a theft call for service. A little boy was harassed. He was bullied. He had the seat of his bicycle taken. His older brother went and confronted some young men who he believed were involved in the taking of that bicycle seat. And then he returned home, and that's when the mom called the police. It was a police response to that call for service. The police officer, what we know right now, did his job. He not only responded to that call, but he went to a nearby corner store a couple blocks away to try to retrieve video that would have captured this incident in progress, and he wrote a police report. And after he wrote his police report, he cleared that call for service. Tragically, afterwards, and through no fault of the police officer, this murder occurred. And the appropriate focus, I think, is to identify and apprehend the person responsible for this brazen and callous act of killing this woman. And that's what we're dedicated to do.
I think the question wasn't, did the police officer do anything wrong? It's people are going to see that and know, you call the police and someone's going to come and retaliate against you. Like, how do you give people the confidence to come forward if they're really taking a huge risk by doing this?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, people are coming forward. Our homicide tips increased 116% last year. That's something that I've said quite often, and I'll continue to say it. We understand what trust looks like, and we understand that if that gunman decided to resolve whatever conflict he had access to a firearm, to get back to the mayor's point. So it's a petty dispute that's resolved with gun violence because he has access to a firearm and because he chooses to arm himself in a society, in a state that doesn't view the illegal possession of a firearm as a serious crime.
Is there something that we need to do, though, to help protect these people more in this situation? It sounds like she had at least indicated that she didn't feel safe and had gone so far as to ask the housing department to move them. I think they were public housing, if I'm correct. And they were denied. Do we need to do something more to help protect these people that are coming forward and don't feel safe? And are, it sounds like indicating that to the police and to the city.
Well, first, let me just say, I think we need to have all of the details as it relates to that particular situation, but I think we want to protect anybody who wants to come forward. And, you know, we've had people in protective custody. I don't know if that kind of request was made, but we don't want this to happen to anybody who wants to step up and help us to reduce the violence that's occurring in our city. I think the big issue, which is why the gun bail issue has come to light by the city council, is what do we do at the state level? If we're going to reduce gun violence in the city, we need to reduce gun violence around the state. In other states, having an illegal gun is a felony. And the fact that it is still a misdemeanor in this city presents a problem. When we know we have these many guns on our streets, it's a problem. So what I want you to know is that I have had conversations with all of my surrounding jurisdiction counterparts, and we are willing to go to Annapolis together to focus on this particular issue, and that's to make having illegal guns a felony in the state of Maryland and in the city of Baltimore. We know we can't do this stuff by ourselves, and so we need other folks to join us and partner with us on this effort.
Are you guys looking into their housing department requests that they've talked about being moved and that it was denied? Are you guys looking at that?
We can take a look at that.
Can you walk out why making it a felony is such a high priority? I mean, you hear from people, it's better to be caught with a gun than to be caught by somebody else without one, right? Like, you don't want to risk being in a gunfight.
I'm trying to understand your question.
So, well, just changing it from a misdemeanor to a felony really deter people who kind of think that having a gun is good and should.
Well, when it's not even a felony, you don't get a sentence to keep you behind bars. What we're finding is we're locking people up who are involved in gun violence, and they're back out on the street. We're not taking it seriously at the court level enough in terms of the sentences that can be provided as it relates to gun violence in our city. We have too many guns, illegal or otherwise, on the streets of our city committing crimes against individuals in our communities, and it has to stop. And it has to begin with the laws that are in place or not in place. And for it to be a felony to have a gun is nothing of a deterrent to someone who's walking around the streets with one. And when you're at a young age and you're carrying a gun, it's even more prolific in terms of individuals being involved in criminal activity. And that's why we're trying to put curfew laws in place. We're trying to make sure people know where their children are. We're trying to engage them in programs throughout the summer. We're trying to make sure young people are employed. We're putting all of our agencies and our resources together to make sure that we've got our hands on our children, but we also have to make sure that the city streets are safe.
Regarding overtime, today the Board of Estimates approved 18 million overtime for the police department, 6 million for the fire department. Same time, you've addressed criticism of police overtime. How are you planning to deal with this problem that takes away money you've said in the past from schools and parks and other city services?
Well, first we're doing an audit, as we promised that we would do. So we're auditing.
What is the status of that audit?
It's in place.
What does that
It's
mean,
in place.
please?
That means that We have approved the audit process. The process is taking place. They've sat down with the police department. They're collecting the data. We should hope that when they get through all of that, that we'll take a look at that and see where we go from there. When we talk about police overtime, with this kind of violence that's going on in our city, I'm sure nobody is saying take police officers off the streets. We're trying to get police officers in the streets.
Right,
We're
but
still.
The question has been of abuse of that overtime that you pointed out, and the police recently had a case of alleged abuse of overtime. So there's two issues there. One is whether overtime is being abused, and the second is whether you need more officers on the street. So I'm trying to get an idea of how you're planning to deal with the problem of fraudulent overtime that the federal case and the recent cases have addressed.
Well, I think those are under investigation, and what we're doing is we're auditing the police department's overtime so that we can see exactly what is occurring, so that we can make whatever adjustments that we need to make. But at the same time, we've got police officers in the academy because we know that we still need police officers on our streets of our city. And as I said a few weeks ago, I'm grateful that we now have people in our communities who want to be police officers. This time last year, 56 people wanted to be police officers. Today, 157. Just graduated one class, another class in fact, two more classes preparing to come out of the academy shortly, who we will put on the streets of our city.
Now, to clarify on the audit hasn't come before the Board of Estimates, has it? Do we have an actual auditor here?
So let me try to address this question.
Sure.
The audit is being handled by the law department, and
Oh, it is?
yes, it's been handled by the law department, and so the process is being handled by a consultant that's reporting directly to the law
And
department.
who's the consultant?
I'm not getting into who the consultant is at this time.
Wait a minute, so let's be clear. Generally, when you retain someone to work for the city, it goes before the Board of Estimates because it's more than X amount.
When it's a normal procurement, this is work product in connection with a litigation that we had coming out of the police FOP litigation for overtime. As a result of that, in connection with that, we understood that there was a broader overtime issue, and that's the issue that we've been looking at.
Well, will
Wait a
this
minute, so
report
you-
be publicly disclosed or what?
Let us get through our audit process. We'll determine what it is that we find, what we need in connection with the litigation that we're doing, and we'll be in a better position to talk about that at that time. Right now, we're in the process of reviewing the information. We don't even know if there has been any overtime abuse other than what's been widely reported. So we're just going through the information now with the outside auditors. It's a reputable firm, and
Madam Mayor, how does this align with your commitment to transparency if we don't know who's helping out the city do the audit?
the law department's helping do the audit.
But I mean, there's a consultant.
Sure, we use consultants all the time as part of our ability to acquire information. That's not something that's new or unique to this particular situation.
So there are three bids. There were three bidders, which we do know,
Yeah.
and there's a selection of a bidder. The information pertaining to the audit as it relates to overtime will be shared, because one of the things that we have to know is where are the problems as it relates to overtime in our city. I have to know that information, so I will share that information. We know that there's X amount of dollars that have been spent on overtime, and we want to know why it's spent, and what areas it's spent in, and what does that mean? So I will share that information. This process is part of that process, but the process of revealing where we are with the audit, how much overtime actually has been occurred, under what conditions does the overtime occur? Is that because you don't have enough police officers? Is it because the stadiums we're using officers at time and a half? Events, are we making sure that those events are covered as it relates to overtime? When events occur in the city, for some reason, we tend to think that the police department can do it for free. Those are real people on the street. And so I need to know where those obstructions are, And through this audit process, I will reveal that information to
But
you.
if there were 3 bids,
Well, let me say, so the mayor used the word bids. These are not bids. We evaluated
Well, there were
3
3 submissions to do
We
the
evaluated,
audit.
is
right.
this part of an existing contract?
No, this is
No.
not, this is part of normal law department utilization of expert resources out there to help us do our job. So we evaluated 3 consultants to see who can do this work, and we picked the one that is best suited. And as the mayor said, we will provide the mayor with the results, and the mayor will determine.
The mayor will share that
That's
information.
right.
The consultants are law firms, is that what you're
No.
looking at?
No,
These are not
they're-
law firms. They're
And what
forensic
was-
accounting firms.
I see, and what was the amount of money that the city has agreed to pay to the audit company or the forensic auditors you've
That-
selected?
Okay, so the process doesn't work like, amount of money. It's dependent upon what the amount of work is, what the scope of the work is. There isn't a outside set of money or
How do you
minimum.
think, it's hourly?
It's an hourly rate?
No, it's a blended type of arrangement, so it's not just an hourly rate. no.
Do we need to audit the consultant arrangement?
I don't think
You
so.
mind? I'm not joking.
I don't think so. They have done these kind of audits all over the country,
How
not
can
just
you
here.
aggregate surplus funds for police and fire prior to this audit being done then? So if you're saying now that you're going to put this much money towards police, this much money in surplus towards police for this coming year for pension or whatever, and then how can you aggregate those without doing the audit first? And saying, because you have money that's gonna be rolling over from the audit possibly that you don't, that's not
No,
what goes
no,
over
no, no.
forever.
There's a budget process, and each department is allocated X amount of dollars to run their departments. And so the police department has X amount of dollars to run their departments, and what we've asked is that they not exceed a certain amount as it relates to overtime. I think if you would go back and look at the history of overtime of police officers, it's been as low, I think, as 19 million, 16 million a year. We've jumped now to about 42 million. So this audit is to look at why are we at 42 million as opposed to the 19 million that we've traditionally in the last, 4 or 5 years had. And so in the last 2 years, overtime has gone from 19 to up to $42 million. And so we want to look at why are we at this level? Is it a shortage of police officers, period, in the department? We know that Freddie Gray's situation caused a number of police officers to retire. So we had to backfill. That requires time and a half for officers. We know that a certain amount of police officers are covering different events, that's time and a half. But we need to know what is this escalation and how do we minimize the overtime? Does that mean that we should create more patrolmen on the streets of our city, more police officers? Because if you look at it, at some point, there's a diminishing return. If you're going to have folks at time and a half, then why don't you just hire X amount of officers and not have time and a half officers on the street? And so, just from my own purview, I'm saying, and I think I've said this, if you could hire a certain amount of officers at 10 million, and if you don't hire them, it's going to cost you 40 million, don't you think it's important, better to hire the officers at 10 million? Those are the kinds of things that I need to look at. And that's what I'm hoping that.
Commissioner, may we ask you a question about this? Have you done anything differently in your fiscal division or, in terms of internal oversight of improving a system that's probably pretty archaic, I would think, to try to flag, overtime amounts that look really whack?
Okay. So Jane, much like the mayor inherited this mess, I did as well. A number of things we've changed. We've changed the overtime approval process. We've reduced the number of categories that officers could choose from because they were overly vague. Just a month ago, based on information that we developed within our own police department, we criminally charged a lieutenant who was stealing from the taxpayers. That was a BPD case. the Baltimore Police Department criminally charged that lieutenant. We go over weekly the top 50 overtime earners as an executive command staff to ensure that there's compliance with our approval processes. We've strengthened our approval processes. We're exploring technology enhancements, the way, much like the way we report crime in Baltimore. There's no technology that's associated with overtime, and there are a lot of technology solutions out there, and I think this audit process will identify for the mayor shortcomings in policy, shortcomings in procedure, best practices, and shortcomings in technology. I think the technology solutions are probably half the battle, and half the battle, Jane, for overtime, where we are right now, is a shift schedule that's
Right.
inside the collective bargaining agreement. That's unheard of in our profession, virtually unheard of. And it's a shift schedule that we don't have the people to support. So half of our overtime now, the way I see it, from my perspective, and I think the audit will bear this out factually for the mayor to make informed decisions, but the way I see it, the drivers of overtime, a big piece of that is the shift schedule. And the commitment that the police department makes. We're kind of found ourselves over the years in the don't say no business to special events, and Baltimore loves its special events.
And we do.
But we just got to find out a different way to collaborate with special events to make sure that the police department doesn't bear the brunt of the cost.
Could you explain or elaborate on how this is the shift schedule that was changed in the 2014 contract, correct? How that you think has affected overtime?
I wish you would come to more police press conferences because I explain this a lot.
So we have about 5 more minutes before we're going to cut this.
Well, Commissioner, just going back to the 12-hour shifts that you want officers to be working over the next couple of days, how long can officers work these extended hours while still being effective?
Well, Paul, I don't want them to work it. They are going to work it. I realize that police officers, policing in the city, particularly at this very challenging time, rest is important, officer wellness is important, but there's not a police officer or a detective that I speak to on a daily basis that's satisfied with where we are right now with the crime fight. So they've said to me, and those who work for me, that they understand that an appropriate response to a spate of violence like we just went through over the last 48 hours is that we're going to have to step up, do more, be more visible, and reassure our community that we're taking this crime very, very seriously. But I'm personally very aware of the rest and the wellness issues associated with this profession, and it's something that I think about constantly.
And I should also add that every week we're meeting, to see where we are, what we need to do as we continue our strategy to reduce crime and violence in our city. But we know it's about the laws as well as it is about the involvement, and it is also about how we deploy our police department throughout our city.
Maybe do you have that confidence in the Commissioner's leadership going forward? Is he the right man to carry out these changes?
Indeed. Thank you.
All right,